I really felt like Chris Paul was the reason that the Suns won this game. Devin Booker did not make a three-pointer last night, missed a critical free throw, dominated in the mid-range, and Chris Paul was the straw that stirred the drink in Phoenix, Jake. I thought he was exactly the reason the Suns won that game.
Yeah, I thought Chris Paul had a great night. Obviously, he's hitting all these mid-range shots. He's controlling the tempo of the game. He's doing exactly what you brought him here to do, which is to basically be a floor general and make sure that your team is in the right position at all times. So I thought, yeah, he did a great job there. But I think, from a team perspective, the Suns won this game because they kept the Jazz from getting hot from three. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. And I really do believe that this game is a you can call it a benchmark, or you can call it like a blueprint for how the postseason is going to go. Which is teams are really going to push out to the three-point line on the Jazz. They're going to force the Jazz to do something other than just shoot threes over them. And they're more than happy to be physical in the paint with the Jazz. And I think we saw that last night. I think we've seen it before. And I think that, with how closely contested this game was, I think it on some level speaks to how good the Jazz are, but on another level, it shows you that teams can beat the Jazz. The Jazz can be had if you play them the right way. So my takeaways from the game were, if you slow the game down, you keep the Jazz from kind of building that momentum and hitting those dagger transition threes that we've all become accustomed to with them. Secondly, I think that the substitution game out of Monty Williams and out of some of the other teams the Jazz have played has been elite. They've been substituting at the right time for the right purpose, not just because, hey, it's 8 minutes left in the quarter and it's time for Book to rest. In the first half, Book played a ton of minutes. Second half, he didn't play as many minutes. Monty Williams was more strategic. So I just think overall this was a highly competitive game, and I think this is the kind of basketball that Jazz fans need to understand is coming in the postseason.
I was really surprised. I guess surprised is not the right word. I was really taken aback, shocked, stunned, knocked off my axis.
You have an axis?
I have a couple of accesses, orifices and stuff. Anyway, I was a little bit surprised to see that the Suns were so able to attack the three-point line defensively against the Jazz. Like that, I think that's your best point. I thought that philosophy and the way that all played out, I thought was a real turning point in this game. The ability for guys like Devin Booker, Chris Paul, all of the guards off the bench, Mikal Bridges in foul trouble all night long. You felt like, boy, that was going to be a difference maker, and it wasn't. You see the way teams are attacking the Jazz. And Jazz fans, I get it. You're going to hate this. It is that blueprint that Jake talked about. Attack the three-point line. Take their space away. Give them layups. Let them win at the rim. Let Rudy have his 16 and 16. Because the thing you cannot do is allow the Jazz to get out on the break, hit back-to-back threes. It just is surprising that the Jazz have been unable to adjust to that philosophy, because you never really felt like, or at least I didn't, and I don't mean to speak for you, but I never really felt like the Jazz were in control of this game. There were long stretches where I felt like the Suns were in control of this game. We were going to the half, and you said the Suns have to be up by 10 points going to the half. They were up 11. Even in overtime, the Suns completely controlled overtime, in my opinion.
From the tip.
Yeah, you just never felt like the Jazz were able to throw a lasso around this game and just ride off.
Yep.
They never were in position to do that, and it's because the Suns didn't allow them to get that momentum, that energy that comes off of those fast break three-pointers.
Yep.
I think you have to slow the Jazz down.
Yep.
And I think the Suns did a wonderful job of that.
Yeah, and I think we've heard some people talk about with Chris Paul that, when Chris Paul is out on the floor that, the Suns tend to play slower. And last night, I said multiple times last night, and we kind of talked about it as we were watching the game, that I actually think that Chris Paul slowing the game down really helped the Suns last night, because again, the Jazz are when you play the Jazz, you go in knowing that you're trying to avoid playing transition basketball with them. And so to see that, in the later stages of, regulation time, And then, of course, in overtime, that Chris Paul is chewing up most of the shot clock, that Chris Paul is really slow playing things. I think it's, again, just to reiterate, that's why they brought him here. Before, you would have had Devin Booker bringing that ball up, and he would have been trying to create off the pick and roll. But that's not what happened last night. So I think it's a great win for the Suns. It's a really impressive win. I think you have to give, again, Monty Williams and that coaching staff a lot of credit, because they could have dropped the ball in this game. They could have run out a completely different strategy and not executed. But clearly, what happened last night is that coaching staff has been watching tape on the Jazz. They understood what they had to do to slow them down, and then they went ahead and executed on that game plan. And that's what it looks like. That's kind of how it plays out in reality when an NBA team says, hey, this is what we have to do to win this game. Okay, now we have to go and execute it. And I just felt like at every single turn, they held their water. I mean, I think at one point, I'd have to go back and look, but I think at one point the Jazz went on like an 8 or 9-0 run at the end of the first quarter, and it didn't really feel like the Jazz were going to just like pull away and like, kind of take
Not at
control, like in game, like if you think about the Jazz versus like the Bulls or like any of these like more mediocre teams, the Jazz just have these runs where they just dominate you, and they'll go like 15, 16, 17-0 run to just take over the game, and then they can cruise. And that didn't happen last night, and I feel like last night was the first real test the Jazz have got in quite some time.
Let's talk takeaways from this game, and I know that seems cliche, but talking Suns and Jazz, what is, if I said to you, what's the one thing that you're going to walk out of this game with? What would be that one thing? Because for me, very simply, it is that the Jazz have not adjusted. The Jazz are not, and I'm wondering, are the Jazz capable of changing direction offensively? Because I think you're seeing that Bojan Bogdanovic is able to play on the block. He can be effective, but they need him to shoot threes to win. Mm-hmm. I think you're seeing that this team is still Don and a bunch of other dudes. I think you're seeing that this team is still at times lumbering. I think you're seeing at times that the Jazz have trouble with athletic guards. And I mean a lot of trouble. Everybody struggles to keep guys in front of them in this league. The Utah Jazz seem to struggle with that more and more as we get down the stretch of the season. Mm-hmm. My takeaway is the Utah Jazz are not adjusting as a team.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like what we talked about yesterday. They simply don't have the roster to make the adjustment. So it's this difficult situation where if we, as the Joker says, if we wind the clocks back to the trade deadline and we go back to the conversations we were having at the trade deadline, we specifically talked about the fact that they needed two things. They needed really one thing, but all-encompassing in one player.
Yes.
You need a wing scorer, or you need an athletic wing defender, a perimeter defender, a guy who's quick. You essentially need a Jordan Clarkson who can start for you and be more consistent than Jordan Clarkson has shown to be. And so since they don't have that, last night what you're seeing is Chris Paul playing all this pick and roll and getting Rudy into difficult situations. You're seeing, Cam Johnson lose Bogdanovic in the corner, right? You're seeing like all these different mini matchups within the game that are getting the Suns the looks that they want to get. And that's the thing. Your best point is that the Suns were dictating to the Jazz. And so my biggest takeaway out of this game is, yes, individuals have the ability to change. Bojan Bogdanovic is absolutely changing the way he's playing the game because he knows he's shooting 19% from three. I think in his last 30 games or whatever it is. It's some ridiculous number, And so I look at Bogey, and I was actually really impressed last night. I thought he had himself a nice game.
Me too.
He didn't shoot well, but I thought he had himself a really nice game.
But we're talking about, not to interrupt you, but talking about that. What's the right way to say this? Talking about that theory on Bojan. If you look at the double clutch, if you look at the hesitation from three,
a lot of people talked about that
because it's a problem, bro. This guy Bojan Bogdanovic is a centrally important figure. He is everything that this Jazz team is missing right now. Mm-hmm. They're missing energy. They're missing the want to, the desire, the ability. they're missing so much of what Bojan Bogdanovic brings to the table. I think it really hurts them. And yes, you're going to look at the box score and you're going to see 20 points on 8 of 17 shooting. But you know what? I'm going to see 1 of 8 from 3. And a lot of it was not technique. It was mental. It was hesitating, double clutching, not wanting to shoot the 3, not setting his feet on a couple. Sure. Okay, that's mechanical. He's missing threes with his mind.
Yeah.
And at some point, that's got to change. And you know what the thing that scares me most about Bojan Bogdanovic is? A lot of guys don't recover from mental breaks like this. A lot of guys who completely stop believing in themselves never go back. And it'll be a real testament if and I say if he starts knocking down threes at a 30% clip even, that'd be a real testament to his mental toughness.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not an easy hill to climb, but I think, unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, you're a professional, and the mental side of the game as a professional is a huge piece and one that he's got to figure out. But I think while we're on the 3-point subject,
just as Tim.
ESPN playing videos for me. Thanks everybody. While we're on the subject, I look at the 3-point numbers as a team, and it was brutal last night. 11 of 44 from 3.
Oof.
I mean, this is exactly like again.
But wait, don't just gloss over that number. 11 of 44 from 3. Why were they 11 of 44 from 3?
The Suns' defense, the Suns being aggressive on the perimeter,
Yes.
and forcing them to go to the paint and play physical. And I felt like we can talk about DeAndre Ayton and his defense, or frankly lack thereof. To be quite honest with you, I felt like this was a game where the Jazz were going to be able to be really productive inside the arc. I didn't think the Suns were going to allow them to just shoot a bunch of threes, and they still got up 44 attempts. I mean, that's a lot of attempts. Like, let's not just gloss over that either. 44 threes. That's a lot of threes in an NBA game, bro. Like, that's a huge number. The idea, once again, Jordan Clarkson, he's 3 of 9 from 3. He's got 9 attempts on his own. That's 9 empty possessions, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not.
It's a lot. I'm telling you that the swagger, that drip we've talked about.
Yeah.
The Suns have it, the Jazz do not. And the free-flowing ability to attack the Jazz at the 3-point line last night, and the Jazz inability to adjust to that, and I don't mean to keep going back to Don and everybody else. Donovan Mitchell had a great game last night. But he doesn't have a running mate against good teams. I'll remind you again, they lost against a good team on the road. The Heat, the Clippers,
Philly.
The list of games
Dallas.
they've lost on the road against quality opponents now is starting to pile up. And it makes you wonder, well, what's wrong? It's not that something's wrong. It's that these teams they're losing to are tenacious defenders with athletic guards who can defend the 3-point line. And even last night, the George Niang threes in the corner, the Suns were going to live with that.
Yep.
If George Niang is the reason you lose to the Jazz, okay, cool, we'll deal with that.
But this is where the roster thing comes back into play, because teams can say, like, George Niang is a perfect example. You can legit say, whether it's the Suns, Dallas, Philly, whoever, you can say going into the game, hey, we'll live with Niang hitting the threes. If Niang is what they're putting in front of us and what they're going to live and die on, we're going to win this ball game all night long, because George Niang will take 7 or 8 threes a game. Cool. If he comes out with 20 points, okay, we can live with that. But if we shut down Donovan Mitchell, or at least like limit him, not shut him down, because I don't think anybody's actually going to shut him down. But like if we can, keep him on low key almost, like if we can just keep him from exploding, and then you can hold your water when the Jazz are going on runs, you're going to be in good shape. And that's exactly what we saw last night. And I think that the only thing that could cure what ails the Jazz right now is a big who could play and do more in the pick and roll offensively. Because think about it. If Rudy Gobert who had more ability in the pick and roll and could kick out, that would create this whole new dynamic for the Jazz. But they don't have that either, so it makes it difficult.
Well, and I think the other thing that really comes to mind, and something that we all have to consider, is that at some point, the Jazz were going to get here. This was inevitable. You were going to have major struggles against the top teams in the West. Now what? Now what happens? Now you go to Portland. And, you wonder, back-to-back after an overtime game, late at night in Phoenix, and now you got to take on the Blazers tonight. Are these back-to-back losses? Because the Suns, by the way, are going to the Clippers.
Yeah.
That lack of sleep is a lot more palatable after a win, after a big win. Are both of these games you went to die? Maybe. But now what? Where do the Jazz go from here? How do the Jazz react from here? Do they truly have that character where they can step forward and say, okay, hey, we still are the best team in the NBA. We still have the best record in the West. Oh, by the way, what did you tell me about AD?
He's coming back.
Go ahead and update that
they're
story.
targeting him to come back on the 15th against the Celtics. That's what they're looking for. LeBron's target to come back on the 30th. But yeah, I mean, they expect him to be cleared to come back, and I think that my only question with AD coming back will be, how aggressive are they with the minutes? I mean, you can't tell me he's going to roll out and play 35 minutes.
Well, I don't think you can do that. I mean, I think we saw that with KD last night. By the way, we're going to talk about that in a minute. That was freaking bizarre. But the Lakers are on the way back. The Clippers are playing good basketball. I think, I look at this game. It's nice that the Jazz got to sleep in their own bed last night. But how do you deal with this loss? That's what defines character in the NBA. It's not what you do after a win. It's what you do after a loss. And a loss that you feel like, that could be game-changing, could be season-changing. A couple other things I want to talk about out of this game. Rudy Gobert's got to stop bitching at the refs. And I know that, everybody in the NBA does that. Not everybody throws themselves on the floor at the end of a quarter in a playoff game and then has to go out of the game to be evaluated. And this flopping thing, this yelling at the refs every time, I don't know when Rudy Gobert became such an entitled infant that he needs to yell and scream at the officials. When did this start? I mean, is it after the Philly game?
Sure, I don't know. I think it was definitely happening before the Philly game. I mean, he's been complaining for a long time. I think the antics and what he's doing, like the contact lens thing at the end of the game, or any of the stuff, like you were saying, throwing himself on the floor. Like, Rudy Gobert definitely thinks that he's the best center in the league and that he should get calls, and that's just not the case.
Yep, Brandon Whiteside says Suns barely won, and the Jazz were totally off. It wasn't the Suns' defense. It was mental mistakes and a lack of rebounds.
You're living in an alternate reality, bro.
With all due respect. Dude. And Brandon, I love talking to you.
Yeah,
I think you're one of the better Jazz fans we talk to, but I look at the rebounding disparity in this game. And yeah, you're right. The Suns got a hell of a lot more rebounds. I think it was 61-45. They got a lot more rebounds. How are you getting out rebounded? Like, I look at DeAndre Ayton's game last night, 18 and 12. And a lot of people just look at this box and say, oh, well, it's Rudy doing 16 and 18. Right, but the pivotal critical rebounds went to DeAndre Ayton late in this game. Somehow, some way, and I don't understand that, because I will again say that DeAndre Ayton's an average player. Rudy Gobert is a star in this league because of his abilities defensively.
Yeah.
He is a double-double machine. And DeAndre Ayton beat him in several critical situations last night. And I maybe that's mental. I'm not sure. Maybe they're, as a team. No, the Jazz did not rebound well last night as a team. The Suns rebounded really well as a team last night. If you go down and you look at the numbers, 12 for Crowder, 12 for Ayton, 8 for Dario Saric, all the guards, 4 for Book and Chris Paul, 3 for Mikal Bridges in very limited minutes. Torrey Craig, I thought he had huge moments last night. He had 5 boards. Cam had 8 boards. The Suns as a team were more willing and able to rebound last night. But, Brandon and Tyler is saying the same thing. Tyler's saying, I'll give you a lot of credit for not being an I told you so. But what are you looking at? Suns defense making a difference? Not a chance. Like, what do you mean?
What do you
not
mean,
a chance,
dude? Again, tell me the 3-point stats again for the Jazz.
The Jazz shot 25%, 11 of 44.
25%, and you're telling me that the Suns defense had nothing to do with that? How long are we going to die on the hill as Jazz fans saying, "Oh, well, the Jazz just had an off night against Dallas, against Philly, against Phoenix, against Denver"? How long are we going to say, "Oh, well, the Jazz had an off night"? No, it's not them having an off night. It's these teams playing difficult defense on the perimeter. We watched this game from start to finish, front to back, cover to cover, every possession, and I'm telling you right now, the Suns were on a mission to run them off the three-point line. There were 5 instances where the Jazz got the Suns defense moving around in rotation, and they were able to get an open look, and they missed those shots. That's on the Jazz, not on the Suns. But what I'm telling you is this Jazz team, a team that has shown it can shoot 40% plus from 3, doesn't go 11 of 44 as a team, and then you want to just say that they're off. That's just not how it works.
Well, maybe Will makes the best point. He says, we can talk all about stats and box scores. Screw that. This was playoff basketball, and the Jazz didn't show up for long stretches in this game. I agree with that.
And I agree with that mentality, dude. I'm glad someone's saying it because, I feel like we talk about it a lot, and a lot of people will call us haters, but this was a playoff preview. There's no question about it. It had the feel. It had the intensity.
Yeah.
Devin Booker not hitting that game winner and being all pissed off about it. There's a reason he was pissed off about it. This game should not have gone to overtime.
Yeah, and I thought, listen, there's no bigger fan of Devin Booker than me. Devin Booker got outplayed last night.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell was the far better player, in my opinion, the far more aggressive player, in my opinion. I think you look at the officiating, and I want to say it was Pat was talking about the officiating. He said something to the effect of that the Jazz got all the calls last night. I don't think the Jazz got all the calls. I don't think the Suns got all the calls. I think the officiating was terrible at times, but it went terribly both ways. I look at some of the diving that went on. I think the Jazz are hurting themselves with all this diving. I really, really do. Bogdanovic, Rudy Gobert falling on the floor is the perfect example. Rudy Gobert with this contact lens thing. When your teammates are yelling at you.
He's clapping at you to put it in, dude. Do it.
Jordan Clarkson and Donovan Mitchell are yelling at Rudy to let's go. Like, Donovan Mitchell, let's go. Wanting at the end of the game, if you didn't see it, before the last free throw that Chris Paul made, there was about a minute and a half delay because Rudy Gobert is all of a sudden having an issue with a contact lens. And he's joking about it. They give him the contact lens, and he puts it on his fingertip, walks all the way to the other end of the floor where they're shooting the free throw, stands on the low block, and isn't putting the contact lens in his eye. Just delaying, wasting time.
I think there was 7 seconds left at that point.
And Donovan Mitchell is yelling at him, let's go, like telling him, get it in, let's go.
Yeah.
And there's just no rhyme or reason for it.
Yeah.
If you look at his teammates when Rudy limped off the floor with this supposed head injury, the replay shows there was no hit to the head, and he's almost got shot, and then he's upset he has to go out of the game.
Yeah.
Well, you faked like you got hit in the head. You laid on the floor. They stopped the game to give you treatment. Yeah, you got to go out of the game.
Yep.
And it's like he didn't realize that was going to happen. You've got to stop yelling and complaining on every single call.
Yeah.
Every single no call. It's part of the NBA. And what I say is the Suns just did a better job executing their game plan.
Yep.
And that's why I ask, what's next for the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, that should be concerning.
Where do you go from here? What's the next evolution? That for me, that's a big question. Where do you go from here? Dan the Man says, this is excited for a Suns win as I have been in a decade. I have been a longtime Suns fan, and I don't remember beating a team as good as the Jazz. I tip my cap. That's the thing. The perception about the Jazz is that this is a very good team. And you know why? Because they are a very good team.
Yeah.
They just have lost their way. And I wonder, is this the defining moment for Quinn Snyder as the head coach of the Jazz?
I don't know, man. I hope not.
Well, I think the adjustments they make or don't make right here could be defining.
Well, here's the thing. What adjustments are they going to make though? Like if you legit take a second and think about it, it's not like they can like make some easy obvious adjustment.
No.
Again, because and again, I don't want this to come off as like a I hate Rudy Gobert thing, but the fact is he's not a facilitating big. He's not LaMarcus Aldridge who can move the ball around. That's not what Rudy Gobert does. He sets picks and he rolls, So when you don't have an interior player who can kick out, who can give you those options, that's kind of what makes Nikola Jokic so good. Because you can put him at the elbow or the top of the key.
Yes.
You can run pick and roll, but then he has options. He can shoot it. He can drive it. He can drive and kick. He can drive and go for the foul.
He can throw a cross-court pass last night to Aaron Gordon in the corner.
Yeah,
who drops the three. Like
that flexibility is what the Jazz don't have.
Yeah, and I look at it. Alex is asking what we're talking about with their big game losses on the road. I would just point to these losses on the road. Back-to-back Phoenix and Dallas. By the way, when's the last time this team lost back-to-back games?
By the way, Dallas lost to Houston last night by 10 points, just saying.
Yeah. The loss at Golden State, 131 to 119. I look at the loss at Miami. I look at the loss back-to-back with New Orleans and Philly. So when's the last time they lost back-to-back on the road? They went to New Orleans. What did New Orleans have at the time? Aggressive guards that attack the paint, and they used Zion Williamson to attack and wear Rudy down. What happened when they went to Philly? You ran into Joel Embiid, who is very much a Nikola Jokic guy, type player, who shoots threes and can finish at the rim. And you look at the rest of the makeup of that Philly team, it's Ben Simmons attacking the basket. It's low block. It's like you have
Tobias Harris
on the low block. The blueprint is out. The formula for beating the Jazz is out. If you go to the Clipper loss, what did the Clippers do? Same thing that the Suns were doing last night.
Mm-hmm.
Switching Rudy onto guards, playing pick and roll, and it really makes the middle of the paint a much easier place to navigate if you're the Suns, if you're the Clippers. And the other thing I would point to is, when are teams going to stop going under screens on Joe Ingles?
I don't know, bro. They got to learn that lesson because he knocked down a couple of them last night.
So you look at that loss on the road to the Clippers. I look at the loss on the road to Denver. Now, granted, I think they came back and beat Denver at home. But I look at some of these. Road losses. It's becoming troublesome.
It's a trend.
It is, you're not that team that ran off all those wins in January and February. You're not that team, that is as dominant and swag-packed as you were. And a lot of people want to point to this last 9-game winning streak. That's fine, but I would point to who they did it against, and I would ask you how Bojan Bogdanovic performed in those 9 games. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what's changed.
Yeah.
Is that Bojan, Bogey's not standing out there dropping bombs anymore.
Listen, it's cool to beat who did they beat by 40? Who was that? I can't remember
Well,
who that was.
if you look at the win against Orlando,
that's who it was.
137 to 91.
Yeah. They dominated Orlando. But again,
dismantling.
But like as a Jazz fan, like I understand that the defense of what we're saying as well. Can't you see the 9-game winning streak? But as a Jazz fan, wouldn't you rather be saying, hey, it is the expectation that they would beat these teams. Not just beat them, but like handle them. Like What are we even talking about with Orlando? Cool. Beat them by 100. Who gives a damn? Just get the W, get to the next game. Because that's a game that you should win every single time.
Yeah.
It's this whole idea about, hey, these road losses against good teams, the thing that concerns me the most, this isn't like road losses in like a 5-game stretch where you play like 5 really good teams in a row and you were tired and we can kind of write it off. Bro, this has been happening all season long. I mean, this is not something new. And so when you think about how the postseason is going to stack up, if the Jazz are able to keep the 1 seed, which is another topic of conversation this morning, are they going to be able to keep the 1 seed? I think they'll be able to keep it, but hey, we'll see what happens. Let's just assume they keep the 1 seed. Okay. They're going to play the 8 seed. They're going to win that series. Then the playoffs start for them. After the first round, after you play that first, series, you get to the second one, that's when the postseason starts for you. And I want to know, who are they going to play? Are they going to see the Nuggets in the second round? Are they going to see the Clippers in the second round? What's it going to be? Because that's when things get real.
Yeah. And I think, the interesting thing, you bring up the Nuggets, like they had a grinded out win last night against San Antonio. That's a real tough game. This game tonight for the Jazz at home against the Blazers, my God, this is asking a lot. Mm-hmm. But you're one of the best road team or home teams rather in the history of the NBA. When you look at how well the Jazz have played at home this year, they're truly one of the best home court teams in the history of the NBA this year. And so you've got to use that. And you have to find that next gear tonight that's going to be missing. You've got to go and find that. When you're in the second quarter and there's 5 minutes left and you're dying and you're just trying to get to the half, you need to find that gear. When it's the fourth quarter and you've given everything you had in the third quarter, because this Jazz team is a phenomenal third quarter team, when you come out in that fourth quarter and you're winded a little bit, you got to go find that.
Yeah.
When you're down, or really the thing against the Blazers is when you're up 2 with 7 seconds to go, you better find that and make sure that Dame time doesn't happen. Like there are these moments that are going to happen tonight where you're going to need what you don't have. And if you don't go and get what you don't have, you're going to lose.
Yeah, and
it's that simple.
I completely agree with you. This is a big game tonight. Not only to kind of get their swagger back, and kind of get back on the high horse feeling, but the only other thing I want to point out about this game last night is the fact that Jordan Clarkson really didn't do a whole lot once again, and I think that it concerns me a lot that the Jazz don't really have the guy coming off the bench that's going to give him 20.
Yeah.
And kind of give him that boost.
He's another one that was so hot early in the year. And JC, I think, is just, I don't know, is it that he's cooled off? I don't know.
Don't know, dude.
But I think he's another guy that's kind of lost his confidence in that three ball. They need to just keep shooting threes. I don't care if they go in or not.
Well, they ain't got a choice. I mean, that's how they win games.
That's who they are. Shoot 100 threes a night. I don't care. And again, and I like talking to Jazz fans, but at some point you have to be willing to admit who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell is the best player in the NBA right now, and you guys just won't say that. Your ridiculous takes on Devin being better than Donovan make you look stupid. Okay, first of all, Donovan Mitchell's not the best player in the NBA.
It's not close.
He's not Kevin Durant, who, again, Kevin Durant rolled out of bed last night and started dropping all wet jump shots, like no rim, snapping nets, like, did he turn the ball over? I think it was 6 times. Yes.
Yep.
Kevin Durant rolled out and scored points last night when he hadn't played in, a month and a half?
Easily, yeah.
That's the best scorer in the NBA. I think the best player in the NBA right now, I mean, pick your poison.
It's LeBron or James Harden.
It's LeBron or James Harden, and it's not Donovan Mitchell, with all due respect.
And it's not Devin Booker either.
No.
By the way.
No, it's not.
Just to say that.
I think they're pretty even. Booker and Donovan last night, the issue becomes it's Don and everybody else.
Yeah.
And so it puts Donovan in a position where you don't really want to be. He needs, once he gets a legit number 2 running mate, Donovan Mitchell's going to be deadly. And Brandon made an interesting point. Brandon Whiteside said Suns would still be a lotto team without Chris Paul. Well, the Jazz would be a lotto team without Donovan Mitchell.
By the way, that's cool. They still would be a lottery team without Chris Paul, but I got news for you. They got Chris Paul.
Yeah,
and he was on the floor last night, and he dominated the Jazz. So I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just saying, like, again, I want Jazz fans to wake up. Like, you guys can keep giving us the, hey, well, they'd be a lottery team if they didn't have Chris Paul. Okay, great. Who cares? They have Chris Paul. He put up, 25 last night and gave him, 12 dimes or whatever it was. He dominated you guys, right? Like, he dominated the mid-range in this game. Like,
Brandon said Conley needs to step up. We need Conley to be Chris Paul-type player. Mike Conley's 86 years old. I think they're both in their early 90s.
Yeah, Mike Conley is never going to be the style of player that Chris Paul is.
Old dogs don't change their spots, man. Like, if this is a guy who is when the ball's going in the hole, again, Mike Conley needs to shoot more threes.
Mm-hmm.
because he's a lethal three-point shooter. Mike Conley's not a get-to-the-mid-range game guy. I just don't think he's that guy. I think Chris Paul's one of the best point guards that's ever played. I mean, I look at his ability to control a game, his ability to still defend, his ability to create space for his other players is remarkable.
Yeah.
You're still having to double team Chris Paul, and he is still torturing you.
Yeah.
Dinga, good morning to you, says, I think the Jazz are going to come back in the next few games, but the playoffs are going to be more problematic, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Rob Sports says you're going to need what you don't have. If you don't go and get what you don't have, you're going to lose. Literal legendary quote.
Dude, yeah, and while I appreciate the humor with that, I also completely agree with the take. Again, on Twitter last night, we're literally talking about the fact that this is what happens. Last night, this is what happens when you didn't get Aaron Gordon, when you didn't get Norman Powell, when you didn't get any of those guys that were available at the deadline. Now we're seeing
it's a kick in the nuts right now.
Now you're paying the price.
And you look at the Nuggets last night, and I hate to keep going back to the Nuggets, but you look at the Nuggets last night struggling against San Antonio, and it was a struggle. Jamal Murray didn't play. And what did they do? They leaned a little bit more on Aaron Gordon, and they went and worked a little bit harder. And when there's been a couple of comments. Mike also said, what the hell does that mean about go get what you don't have? Think about Michael Jordan. Okay, the shot on Elo. Think about Michael Jordan, the flu game. The Brian Russell shot. You're out of gas, and yet you have the ability when you're Kobe Bryant in your last game on one leg to drop 61. Because you find that little extra something that you don't know you have until you go and find it.
Yep.
It's like finding that extra can of black beans in the back of the cupboard. You don't know what's in the back of the cupboard till you're hungry and you go digging. And I think the best players have the ability to summon that.
Donovan Mitchell has that ability.
He absolutely does, but he cannot do it on his own. And too many times. The Jazz, last night's a perfect example. They lost in overtime because Donovan Mitchell pretty much took every shot.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a guy, and this is why I talk about Jingles. This is why I talk about Bogey so much. I look. Who else? Where was Royce O'Neal last night?
Royce O'Neal was playing defense and getting in foul trouble. And this is what I say too. It's funny you bring him up. I was thinking about it. It's very much a low key thing that happened in this game, but it's something you have to pay attention to as a Jazz fan. Royce O'Neal is your best on ball defender, and he was matched up against several different players last night, and he gets into foul trouble. And that's not an indictment on Royce O'Neal. That's what happens in the NBA. Good players get you in foul trouble, and that's what happened.
You can't go minus 13 and score 2 points if you're Royce O'Neal. Because, not to be redundant, because then it's Don and everybody else. And if you look up and down, I mean, you didn't get a whole lot out of Jingles last night.
Nope.
Because he had a hand in his face the entire night, and when they went under the screens and he was open, he missed.
I think, what did he have, 3 threes last night? 2 threes?
He had 1 3 last night. He only took 2 threes.
I'm surprised by that.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You look at who predominantly shot threes last night. Jordan Clarkson took 9. He went 3 of 9. Don took 12. He went 4 of 12. Bogey took 8. He went 1 of 8. Mike Conley 1 of 7.
That's what I'm saying.
At least
dude.
one guy's got to. And I'm trying to be gentle with this. When you live and die by the 3, you're going to be James Harden, who in the playoffs at one stretch in Houston was 0 of 29 or something like that. Yeah,
0 of 27.
He's 0 of 27 several years ago when Chris Paul left his groin on the floor at Toyota Center in Houston. You're 0 of 27. I'm telling you now, when you live and die by the 3, you die more than you live. And at some point, the Jazz need to get back to attacking the basket or just shoot 100 threes.
Yeah.
And if you make 40 and you miss 60, you're above the curve.
Yeah.
That. I don't know how more.
That's what I'm saying. You either have to go further into the 3-point strategy, or you got to get off that horse and start getting high percentage of looks in the paint. You can't have. And it's so funny that this happened last night because we literally talked about this on the show yesterday. These guys are not Stephen Curry. They are
No.
not going to shoot 40% every single night and be consistent with it. That's not – Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. Nobody's going to be Steph Curry. And so if you're the Jazz, you have to – you can't – if you're going to live and die by the three, you can't have most of your three-point attempts being contested shots, which is exactly what they were last night.
But you better watch Dash because if the Lakers get healthy and if AD comes back and doesn't go KD Achilles on us, look out.
Yeah.
If they get LeBron and you finally put this group together, you look out because Andre Drummond is a real problem when those two guys are healthy. When LeBron and AD are healthy and then you inject Andre Drummond and you have all these guys who have been playing heavy minutes that are now developing for the Lakers as those guys have been out. The Lakers are the best team in the NBA when everybody is 80 to 100%.
With a rested LeBron James.
Yeah,
that's a scary thought.
The Lakers are the best team in the NBA. They're better than Brooklyn in my opinion.
Yeah.
I look at the Nuggets, I look at the Suns, the Jazz, those are the best teams in the West. I haven't even mentioned the Clippers who are playing much better basketball. I'm telling you now, all of these teams have the ability to push out to the three-point line and make life very difficult for the Jazz. Who are the Jazz going to be when we get to the playoffs? Because they can't be who they are now.
They can't be who you were last night.
It simply cannot. Trevor Aki, Ockey, T.O. What's up, T.O.? Rudy was really frustrating me during this game, was being schooled by Chris and D-Book and then trying to get calls by flopping. The flopping thing is everybody in the NBA flops. Every team, everybody does it. Rudy Gobert, just last night, just was at a new level. Throwing him, I've never seen Rudy Gobert completely fake an injury and throw himself on the floor.
And then be surprised when he gets taken out of the game to be evaluated.
That was incredibly disappointing.
What do you do? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Mr. Mitch says, this is who the Jazz always turn into. The pumpkin has arrived at Vivint.
Oh.
Ouch.
Oh.
Jeez. I mean, I guess so.
Wow.
This is the best Jazz team I've seen since Stockton and Malone.
Listen, that comment has undertones of hitting the panic button, in my opinion, and I don't think you need to be hitting the panic button, but I do think you need to be saying to yourself as an organization, Quinn, the coaching staff, Don, the players, they all need to be saying, hey, we have to figure out what we're going to do to combat these teams pushing out to the three-point line. We have to figure out what that strategy is, because I don't think it's beyond them to figure out what they can do with their current roster. Do I think it's very difficult with what they have to work with? Yes, I think it's very difficult, dude.
Yes.
I think not having a big who can facilitate on some level out of the paint is extremely difficult, which is why it's such a luxury to have Andre Drummond, Nikola Jokic, Kristaps Porzingis, Karl Anthony Towns, all these guys, Anthony Davis, who can facilitate out of the paint to get you wide open looks. Because that's the thing. That's what this team desperately needs. They need the ability to have four guys standing on the arc, and they need the ability to swing the ball, because that's what we're not seeing anymore. We don't see. When's the last time you saw? I think we saw it twice last night. But when's the last time you consistently saw the Jazz with like elite ball movement? Because that's what they were doing early in the year.
You know what you haven't seen? When's the last time you saw a power forward pass to a cutting guard for the Jazz?
Yeah, that doesn't happen at all, ever.
This team has become so reliant on pick and roll, and has become so reliant on not even reliant. This team has become so comfortable shooting the three, it stops everything else.
Yeah.
And granted, it powers Rudy Gobert. There's no doubt that they run this much pick and roll, high pick and roll, so that Rudy can roll to the basket, catch lobs, pick up, clean up the garbage, miss jumpers, absolutely. But it's at the end of the game, you need one shot with what was it? 7-8 seconds to go.
Yep.
You're down 3. You need one shot. Why is Rudy Gobert even in the game? He is of no use to you.
They even said it on the broadcast that the Suns were playing 5-on-4 defensively.
Well, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, I just didn't understand that. And if you need 3 in that situation, who was going to get the ball? Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Do you think the Suns knew that? Yes, because they fouled him the moment he got the ball. And one of the comments, and I'm sorry, it was just buried, but one of the comments was that should have been a 3-point play. He fouled
No.
him long before he ever got into the shooting
Dude,
motion.
Donovan hadn't even landed yet to start to rise up into
Yeah.
his shot, and he was already fouled.
He was fouled, yeah. Brandon Whiteside says points in the paint, Jazz 61, Suns 42. Right, but my point is, what does that mean? That's not, if the Jazz win the points in the paint, that's great. That's not how they win games.
Mm-hmm.
And if this team is not hitting threes, they're not going to win games.
Teams want them to score in the paint.
Yeah.
That's what they want to happen.
That's exactly right. Teams will take layups and Bogdanovic with his back to the basket. Teams will love to have that happen.
Yeah.
Because it kills their momentum. It absolutely kills their momentum.